Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah, distinguished guest speakers and participants. A very good morning, afternoon, and evening to all of you. On behalf of the General Council for Islamic Banks and Financial Institutions, I have the honor and pleasure of welcoming all of you to this webinar on AI and data analytics, revolutionizing Islamic banking operations and services. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know that artificial intelligence, or AI in short, and data analytics are transforming the global financial landscape. And of course, Islamic banking is no exception. These technologies are revolutionizing how Islamic financial institutions are operating, how do they analyze their risk or deliver their services, and also make strategic decisions, all while observing the Sharia principles. In this context, CIBAFI is pleased to mark the soft launch of the 10th edition of its flagship publication, the Global Islamic Bankers Survey GIBS 2025. This year's edition is special as it presents a historical overview of the findings from the past decade and offers valuable insights into how industry perspectives on key risks and challenges have evolved over time. Today's webinar presents key insights from the GIBS 2025 report. We will explore how Islamic banks are adopting AI and data analytics to enhance their banking operations and performances as well as profitability. We will also discuss use cases of AI implementation and related benefits for Islamic banks, and also identify the opportunities and challenges that they are associated with AI-driven data analytics as perceived by Islamic banks. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start, we would like to make a couple of announcements. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please do not hesitate to write them in the chat section below, and we will try our level best to answer these questions. The webinar will be recorded and posted on CIBAFI social media platforms in the coming days. Please follow us on social media platforms. We would also appreciate your kind feedback on the organization of the webinar by filling out the evaluation form, which will be sent to you through email. Now, without further ado, I have the pleasure to call upon Dr. Abdulillah Belatik, Secretary General of CIBAFI, to deliver his welcoming remarks. Dr. Belatik, the cloud is yours.
Thank you, Muhammad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Salatu wassalam ala Mawlana Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ajma'in. Distinguished guests, dear colleagues and friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And good morning, good evening to all of you wherever you are. It is a great pleasure to welcome you to this specific and particular edition of the launch of the Global Islamic Bankers Survey, which is the 10th edition. Let me just look back a little bit. About 11 years ago, when we started thinking about it, we did not have this publication. And at the time, we were thinking with the secretariats and with friends and colleagues and stakeholders that CIBAFI, we need to have a publication, which should be like an annual publication that should track how the industry is doing, what is our progress, where are we lagging behind perhaps, and what are the strengths and opportunities that the industry has. And together with our stakeholders and friends and secretariats and other colleagues, we started thinking and looking at all the existing publications, and we did not come across a publication that will gather the sentiment and the views of the industry practitioners, really the C-level or CEOs of the Islamic banks. And this is where we started developing the concepts of having the confidence index, the risk dashboard, and the thematic themes for each year, which keep changing based on what we see the trends and opportunities and challenges within the industry. What comforted our choice for this type of publications is not only to say, like, where we are doing great, but also where perhaps we are not doing so great, or perhaps there is a need to perhaps balance our efforts and benchmark what we are doing compared to others. After the just few publications, I got some very like important feedback and very deep feedback. I had some when we had, for example, the first instances, we had sections about SME financing. I had some CEO friends of Islamic banks chatting and saying that we did not know that like over 60% or 65% of the Islamic banks have a dedicated department to SMEs, and we don't have it. So we should make sure we have this. And 1, 2 years, 3 years later on, I think maybe all now we cannot find an Islamic banks which does not have a dedicated SME department with facilities and facilitation and so on. Similarly, when we started talking about sustainability, was already maybe 8 years or something ago. At the beginning, most of the members, they were like questioning our approach and saying, shouldn't this be the role of the government to do? Why Islamic banks should be involved? You cannot find now an Islamic bank that is not really deeply active in these areas of sustainability, sustainable development. And the same goes with, for example, with financial technologies, with fintech. We had exactly the same feedback early, but because we benchmark this, because we bring some of these new trends that bring both challenges but also opportunities, then Islamic banks can see where they benchmark compared to the others, compared to the peers, compared to the conventional how they are, which allows them perhaps to move forward. This year's theme is on AI and data analytics. Again, this is something really very early. We will discover the findings and some discussions on this. But I wanted to really take just a moment to present my warm thanks and deep acknowledgements and recognition to the teams and staff and stakeholders that have been participating with us in this Global Islamic Bank survey. I think this year we have over 105 from a number of countries participating. I would like to pay tribute to those that helped us in developing the concepts first, and many of them were either CIBAFI staff at the time or friends. There are names. Of course, Peter Casey has been backing us from early days, and also on the brainstorming and discussion of coming up with the concept. Thank you. And there were many others: Jinanja, Saad Bakrali, and Jamshed Anwar also, and many others. Actually, I cannot mention all of them. And of course, the current staff that continue this legacy and continue doing this work. I think it's a great work, and we hope that this, of course, we will help the industry moving forward. I cannot finish without thanking, of course, for this webinar and this session, all the speakers that have made time to share with us the experiences and expertise, and of course, our partner of almost every theme or every issue of this Global Islamic Banker Survey, DDCAP, and in particular, Stella Cox. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Belatik. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Jenny Denniston, Director of Business Development at Ivy Business School, Canada, to deliver her statement. Ms. Jenny, the cloud is yours.
Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you today. It is morning in Toronto, where I am, and very warm. I feel like it's possibly rivaling temperatures to many parts of the world that participants are on. So wonderful to be here with you. It is my pleasure to share that the Ivy Business School, and I particularly work with Ivy Executive Education, which is the leadership and development arm of the school. We have had a partnership with CIBAFI for over 10 years, and we are thrilled to be partnering once again to be hosting a program later this fall called Leading AI Transformation in Banking, from Strategy to Execution. There are going to be 4 sessions within the program. Dates are to be determined, and we will be in touch with those. The first 3 sessions will be virtual, and the last session will be in person, somewhere in the Middle Eastern region. So we are going to determine the best location for that once we have registrations. In terms of what will be covered in the program, there will be a primary theme for each session. So in the first, we're going to look at what managers need to know about AI and its differences with traditional IT. In the second session, we'll look at what managers need to know about AI and machine learning development cycle. Then we'll dive into exploring AI strategies in large organizations, and we'll bring it all together in that in-person session in terms of how can you successfully execute AI within large organizations. The program is going to be led by Professor Yasser Rawani, who is on the session today. So you are going to be hearing from him and some of his expertise. And so if today really piques your interest, we really hope that you will consider signing up for the program this fall. And we are working very closely with the CIBAFI team to get those dates together, and we'll get them out to you soon. So thank you again for your partnership to CIBAFI and all of your participation for individuals on the session. And I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Jenny. Thank you very much. Now we'll move to the next, which is the presentation on the Global Islamic Bankers Survey. So I'd like to share the slides. I think that slides are visible. Rashid, can you please confirm?
Yes, we
Thank
can
you.
see the slides. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, and thank you once again for joining this webinar. This presentation is about sharing the key findings of the Global Islamic Bankers Survey 2025 report. And this year's topic is AI and data analytics, revolutionizing Islamic banking operations and services. So just quickly looking back, so far we have CIBAFI has published 9 editions of the GIPS report with sharing objectives of monitoring the perspectives of Islamic banking executives on their key concerns and risk for the coming years, as well as we have focused on key trends of significant impact for this Islamic banking industry growth. And this year, the GIPS report is focusing specifically on the theme of AI and data analytics to look at their implementation, what are the challenges Islamic banks they are facing, and also the prospects for the global Islamic banking industry. Looking at the report components, the report covers 3 parts. The first 2 parts are permanent parts as each year's report, looking at the Islamic banking confidence in the future of the industry and the key risks that they may face in the coming years. And this year's edition is special at it presents a historical overview of the findings from the past decade on the first 2 parts of the GIPS report. The third part of the report covers this year's themes, which is exploring how Islamic banks are adopting AI and data analytics to enhance their business operations, their performances, as well as the profitability. Lastly, the report presented the conclusion and recommendations for the stakeholders of the global Islamic banking industry. Looking at the coverage of the survey, this year's report provides a very insightful results covering the view of 105 Islamic banks executives from 29 countries across the different regions. So this is the first part of the report where we have seen the Islamic banks rank their main concerns regarding various issues and challenges facing their institutions over the next 1 to 3 years. So as we can see on the slide here, in this year's report, we have presented a comparison of 10 years of data on the top Islamic banking concerns. So looking at the results, the comparison shows us that the key concerns in Islamic banking remain stable, with stakeholders' expectations and also talent management and business growth continuing as the top priorities for Islamic banking institutions, while AML and CFT compliance and IT as well concern persist over time. In the second part of the report, Islamic banks rank the key risk their institutions are facing in the next 1 to 3 years. As we can see on the slide, we have list down the top three concerns from last 10 years report, and these three are basically part of the list of 22 risks. So we have looked at the, if we look at this risk dashboard findings over the last decade, so cybersecurity has emerged as the most consistent and significant perceived risk, which is closely followed by two others, which is technology and credit risk. So the consistent ranking of these risks not only highlights the industry awareness of digital exposures, but also indicate that what are areas where Islamic banks, they can build resilience and they can intensify as these risks are also evolving over time. The third part of the JIPS report has looked at the adoption of AI and data analytics in Islamic banking operations. In one of the questions, as we can see on the screen, we have asked Islamic banks about their current state of data infrastructure. And it's interesting to see that most of the Islamic banks, they still rely heavily on traditional and on-premises data storage, although we can see many are also planning to shift towards two others, latest technologies like cloud-based or hybrid models. So basically, this transition signals recognition of the need for scalability, flexibility, as well as modern analytical capabilities. We follow up with another question to know exactly what type of data analytical tools Islamic banks are using nowadays. So the finding shows that while advanced tools are also available, banks mainly depend on Microsoft Excel and SQL for their data analytics operations and tasks. As we can see here, AI-powered solutions remain marginal in current use, and this also reveals that a technological lag, or we can say a significant gap between strategic ambitions and operational implementation in Islamic banks. In this question, we focused on the bank's implementation and usage of data analytics in different functions of the banks. Result shows that data analytics is largely concentrated in two areas. The first one, as you can see, IT and also finance. So where operational efficiencies are most visible. But some of the critical areas like marketing and product development are still underserved. And this represents a lost potential for enhancing customer experience, as well as tailoring products that take help from data insights. Moving on, we also ask Islamic banks what business objectives of theirs are impacted by the implementation of data analytics. And the responses we have received shows that data analytics is having a strong impact on multiple areas like compliance, risk management, operational cost control, and so on and so forth. But its influence on innovation, if you look at speed of decision making and profitability, is more kind of a moderate. And this suggests that these areas are ready for deeper integration and data-driven transformation. In regard to AI technology, we ask Islamic banks to share their current status of AI adoption. The results show that although there is an interest in adopting AI tools such as, for example, machine learning and chatbot, but if we look at the actual implementation, that is still limited in Islamic banks. And the least adopted AI technologies, as we can see on the screen, by Islamic banks are generative AI, deep learning, and neural networks. We have also asked Islamic banks what challenges they are facing in implementation of AI in banking operations. The key hurdles which are identified by Islamic banks include integration complexity, limited in-house expertise, and cost, which I would say that they are pretty much classic barriers in digital transformation for any industry or sectors. And interestingly, issues like Sharia compliance and ethics are not seen as major challenges, which of course can encourage a bolder experimentation within a regulated framework. When we have asked about the implementation of AI in different use cases in Islamic banks, the results show that AI has seen some successful adoption within the Islamic banking operations, for example, in fraud detection, customer services, and also in credit scoring. But many institutions, they are still at the early or planning stage. In this regard, I think learning from other institutions' experience or early adopters can definitely accelerate sector-wide implementation of AI in different use cases. On the question of AI integration in data analytics in different areas of Islamic banks, we have seen only a small proportion of banks reported either full or significant AI integration in core analytics like real-time processing or decision making or decision support. And this limitation or this limited scope of responses also pointed out that there is a hesitation, or we can say there is a lack of clarity what AI integration truly means or it truly requires by Islamic banks. In another question, we have asked Islamic banks what benefits they are taking from AI integration. And the results show that where AI is used, banks, they have reported clear benefits in improving, for example, their accuracy, their speed of operation, as well as operational efficiency. So, but if we look at the adoption, it is still in early stage, as I said before, and much of the potential in innovation and customer insight has yet to be realized by Islamic banks. Looking at the conclusion, the JIPS 2025 report draws the conclusion that Islamic banks are in early phase of AI and data analytics adoption, especially when we compare them with conventional counterparts. The most traction so far is seen in back office applications in different areas like KYC, which is know your customer, AML, and fraud detection. Therefore, to unlock greater value, banks will require to have sustained leadership commitment. They also have to focus on strategic investments and also have to show willingness to innovate within Sharia compliant frameworks. Looking at the recommendation at the end of the report, it also offers a number of recommendations to Islamic banks and other stakeholders. To move forward, we believe banks should align AI investment with strategic goals which they have for their coming years, and also explore partnership or vendor models which are available in the industry. Regulators can also give a great support to this evolution through different ways like innovations, sandboxes. They can also update data governance laws and keep a stronger educational framework. Finally, industry bodies must begin addressing potential Sharia concerns proactively to ensure that the responsible and ethical AI adoption in Islamic banking industry is possible. Thank you for your attention. Please note that the full JIPS report will be available on our website very soon in the coming days. So please stay tuned for its publication, which will be announced on our social media platform in the coming weeks. So I will encourage everyone to please follow our social media accounts to remain updated on our recent activities, operations, and publications. So thank you once again. Right, so with this, now I would like to call upon my colleague, Mr. Rashid Itai, who is the Business Development Manager at CIBAFI, to moderate the panel session. Rashid, the cloud is yours.
Thank you, Mohammed. Welcome everyone to this timely session on AI and data analytics in Islamic banking. We can all agree that digital transformation is no longer a future goal. It is a present necessity. In this context, CIBAFI has been working on various projects to support the implementation of the technologies and digital transformation within the core business activities of Islamic banks. And as a result of this, we are pleased to announce the launch of the one of the latest groundbreaking publications of CIBAFI titled the Digital Momentum, Impact on Islamic Banks and Guidelines for Adaptability. This guide explores how digital transformation is reshaping the landscape of Islamic banking, and provides also practical strategies for institutions to remain agile, competitive, and also Sharia compliant in a fast evolving digital world. The guide explores also technologies like AI that are at the heart of this shift, promising not just to gains in operational efficiency, but also like a transformational change in activities like customer engagement, regulatory compliance, and also strategic decision making. across the industry, financial institutions we see that they are actively integrating AI and data-driven technologies because they are viewing them as essential enablers of both internal innovation and also external competitiveness. So yet with great promises of opportunities comes complexities that are related to technicalities, the ethical aspect, regulatory aspects as well. That's why today in this session, it is designed to walk us through the structural journey from foundational understanding to real-world use cases, and finally to the critical governance and risk frameworks that must be considered in building a responsible AI adoption. So for that, we are pleased to have with us today 3 distinguished speakers, each offering a unique lens on this topic, from AI fundamentals to implementation strategies and regulatory insights. So we have with us Professor Yasser Rahrovani, Associate Professor Information Systems at Ivy Business School, Mr. Peter Casey, who is a consultant of CIBAFI, and Dr. Ahmed Tahiri Juti, founder of Neuron AIZ and managing partner at Green for South. So before we begin the session, may I ask the speakers and panelists and participants to turn on your camera for a quick group photo to mark the launch of this session, and we will be given a few seconds for everyone to join visually. Thank you so much. So if you can please turn on your camera. Okay, thank you so much. So let's begin our session, and I will start first with the first speakers. The first speaker, Mr. Yasser, or Professor Yasser, regarding the strategic foundations and organizational readiness. I think the first question that we'll be having in mind is, and perhaps that the audience also will share with me, is the meaning of AI and data analytics, and how we can simplify the complexities related to these terms. So if you can please clear the understanding of this topic in few minutes. Over to you.
Excellent.
Yes.
Do you have my voice?
Yeah.
Do you hear me? Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Wonderful to be here. Thanks for the invitation. And it's great. It's a pleasure to be among this group. I enjoyed the presentation about what executives think about AI integration in banking, and I look forward to learning more about it. So I go with a few sentences and words about AI, and we'll have the extended discussion in the course. So I think one of the challenges we have is to go beyond the shadow of what we think AI is. There is, especially given its significant capabilities, our understanding is quite clouded and it's fuzzy. Some people have a very dystopian view of AI and some very utopian view. Some we have think that AI is very smart and we can delegate a lot of tasks and part of the processes and workflows in organizations to it. At the same time, some of the managers or employees are very hesitant, especially risk aspects that are around it. So if I want to take a few minutes to talk about the differences between AI and the traditional IT, I think that's quite one of the most important things we need to understand to be able to go beyond the shadow. I'll share my slide. It's probably sometimes artwork best represents and shows what we think about AI. So I think this is quite a remarkable art piece. If you can see it from Tim Noble and Sue Webster, 1998. As we see, we see a very beautiful shadow of on the wall. And many people believe that is exactly what is behind AI. And one of the important things is to be able to go beyond that, to understand what exactly is behind when AI spits out something that is very human, very understandable. It sounds like very smart. And managers, when they want to use it in organizations, when they want to rely on it, having AI part of the workflow, it becomes quite important to move from the AI awe and surprise to really the awareness on where we use it, how we use it, and for what purposes we're using it. I'll skip this part. I think the other respected panelists are best to present this rather than myself. But we know that probably banking, insurance, and capital markets, as you see, are on the top of the list in adopting AI. But if you want to move beyond this shadow, what are the specific differences between AI and traditional IT? I can come up with three, which I assume that many of us are aware of it. One is AI does self-learning, and that's different from traditional technology. Traditional technology, or even we call it a rule-based AI, did not have self-learning. It was not automatically learning what can be done. Within the bounds of the rules, we're executing some of the tasks, and that's it. And that's different. So when neural network came, AI does learn from our behavior, even if we do not proactively train it. It is autonomous. It attends different aspects of the data that does not necessarily inform us or we're aware exactly how does that happen. And it also black box is opaque. In contrast to traditional IT, even designers sometimes can't explain why AI hallucinated, why it gave me this answer. That is not exactly what I was expecting. So these are quite important because if you want to rely our processes and tasks and workflows based on AI, we need to be aware, and it has managerial implications on how we integrate, how we manage, and how we, especially with risk mitigation, which is quite big in banking. I assume that is quite important. I want to finish with this slide, which kind of give a broad picture of what AI is and what I call it as AI as a system, not as a technology. So in other words, I think managers less and less are chasing a technology. Should I go with technology A or B? It's more of understanding it's a frontiers of technology. So it's constantly evolving. Something that 10 years ago we called AI is not called AI anymore. It sounds like a traditional AI. So having that said, I think managers need to have a kind of a good understanding of what is under the hood. When we talk about AI. The white part, as we see, is what is AI? What is exactly large language models? What are these GPTs that some of them are locally in the organization, some of them that we all use, ChatGPT or Cloud or Notebook LM. These are some examples that are accessible to all of us. But as a manager, we need to understand what is machine learning techniques, because not as a computer scientist, I'm not a computer scientist, but as a person who want to decide on what data set am I going to pick, how I'm going to train the algorithm. Is it supervised? Is it unsupervised? And why? What are the implications for the processes and the managers and risk that you're taking? So there is quite a work needs to be done to understand at a managerial level what is happening under the hood. On the second part, I think when we zoom out, we need also, many of us are going to rely on AI. Many of us are going to buy packages, but many of us also needs to customize it based on what are our needs or based on the knowledge basis of our own bank rather than what we are given as an off-the-shelf package. For that part, it's quite important to understand different types of AI. As an example, predictive AI is very different from generative, right? So predictive generative AI is creating some risks because it's really good. People can represent themselves when they are, for example, going for authentication and use of an application in banking system. It can really clone our voice very accurately. So it's harmful because it's really good. In contrast, predictive AI is not good, and that's the harm. So the type of AI that we are using is quite important. Managers need to understand how we develop that, not as a computer scientist, but as a person who makes several decisions about the type of data that we are entering and using, and the measurement and those decisions that are managerial, not completely technical. We need to understand how those will lead to some of the biases in the data, in the algorithm, and in the users, the way they use it. And as managers, I think we need to better understand there are a lot of AI snake oil applications in the markets, which are really not that realistic. Sometimes they make claims and we fall for those, but they are not really what they are doing. So we need to be really mindful of what is the claim and what is the use for an application. The next part I'll skip pretty fast and pass the mic back to you. But if we want to put that on understanding of what is AI, how we develop it, then we deploy it in organizations. That I saw the survey, some areas started working and going into different functions in the organizations to understand how we strategize for AI. What is the AI governance? Can we use it for control, and what are the implications? And at the time that it kind of have overlap with human work and expertise, to what extent is augmenting, to what extent is automating? And those are all daily managerial decisions that we may need to make when we are adopting AI, and we need to mindfully do that. And at the end of the day, the black part is the society. So when we deploy AI, individuals use it differently, which can create bias and challenges in the data, which feeds back into AI, self-learns, and it's going to affect the algorithms that we have. So again, coming back to where I started, the AI that we know is very fluid. It's very changing. It's not similar to the traditional technology that we have. And when it's deployed, it's used differently, which has implications on the characteristics and personality of the AI that you're using. So I'll stop here. I'll pass the mic back to you, Mr. Rashid, and I will be happy to plug in back if it's necessary.
Thank you, Professor. I think with this explanation, it makes sense to look also into the current status of AI adoption and data analytics within the Islamic financial services industry, and also to see to have a forward look into what is coming, especially in the next 3-5 years, and how what will be the role of AI in the evolving landscape of the financial services industry. And this is like two parts of this question. The first part, I will address it to Dr. Ahmed to share with us his assessment of the current pace and depth of AI and data analytics adoption among Islamic financial institutions, and if there are any specific areas showing more momentum for the future. And then for the second part, the forward-looking, I will address it to Mr. Peter Casey. Over to you, Dr. Ahmed.
Thank you, Brother Rashid, for the question, and thank you to CIBAFI for the webinar and the invitation. Well, my answer will be based on two perspectives. The perspective of a startupper, because I'm just founded a startup called Neuronize, and the perspective of a researcher. So before implementing or deploying your solution in financial institutions, you have first to deploy the AI mindset, because one of the most important hurdles to implement AI in financial institutions, conventional or Islamic, both, is the AI mindset. Is do we have the AI mindset to support the AI mutation or the AI transformation? So I have some elements that I need to share, that I would like to share with you regarding this topic. So first, in the financial institutions, there is a dual disruption. First dimension of this disruption comes internally. So you have a lot of applications, a lot of aspects that can be conducted with AI internally. For example, you have scoring applications based on AI. You have also recommendations that are hyper personalized to customers. You have also fraud detection. A lot of applications today that would modify and would impact significantly the AI or the business model of financial institutions in general, including Islamic and conventional. The second shift is coming, or the second dimension of this disruption comes from the external sectors. I know it means that today we have the financial institutions that are connected with all the economic sectors in a specific economy. So any shift that is happening in a sector would impact the business model of financial institutions. For example, I give the example here in my presentation of the autonomous vehicles and share mobility. We reduce significantly the number of cars, of personal cars, which means that for financial institutions, they will see their the volume or the size of their car loans decrease because of this mutation due to the implementation of AI in the world of transportation. So the disruption comes from two areas as presented in this slide. Second aspect is that when I'm implementing AI, it's not just to show off or to have a luxurious position in the market, but I need to achieve growth, to enhance my return on equity. And there are three value drivers for financial institutions when they are deploying AI. First, you can have growth in your revenue through recommendation systems, through that can generate deals. They can have also passive recruitment of customers. So this is the first value driver. The second value driver is related to risk cost reduction. For example, when you have very accurate scoring functions or algorithms that can assess the eligibility of customers to certain loans. So you have those algorithms. And third aspect is when you are using the AI agent to automate routine transactions, and this would reduce also the cost of operating cost. And those are the three drivers. Whenever you are deploying AI in your financial institution, you need to discover how my return on equity will be impacted, because at the end of the day, it's good to deploy AI, but what is better is to make it achieve growth and improve my financial performance. Then, of course, when you have financial institutions can be exposed through different ways to AI. First, you can have Gen AI for staff productivity, using AI to make tasks easier, more accurate, more effective. Also, you can use predictive and agentic AI applications for, as I mentioned, for advanced scoring, for recommendation engines, for intelligent chatbots, and leverage large language models and deep learning for core functions. So this is the second exposure, and you can develop things internally, or you can get embedded with startups or with external providers. And you have also what we call the embedded technology AI, for example, when you are connected and integrated with startups. So you have those three ways. For example, in the onboarding process, the digital onboarding process, you can use technologies for optical character recognition, for facial recognition, etc., to make the process smoother, more secure, and of course, with fraud detection possibilities. So there are the three tiers of AI exposure in finance. And during my journey, I discovered that in financial institutions, the main hurdle to implement AI and to adopt AI is mainly due to some pitfalls, some common reflections and ideas that are common in the financial sector. First, you have most of the time you have decision makers. They use fear over vision. They see more the difficulty, the complexity of the transformation process, rather than the strategic opportunity and the competitive advantage that AI can provide to them. So this is one thing to change. The second thing to change is the data governance first. People think that data is always someone else's business, which means that we need something to plug and play. But unfortunately, in AI, you need to constitute your own database. Second thing, AI is a strategic shift, not only, as I said, a gimmick or a luxurious option, which means that whenever you deploy AI, you need to deploy the organizational shifts, the organizational adjustments to achieve this growth and this impact on the return on equity. Fourth thing is that most of the time people think that an AI project is a one-shot project, while an AI, once deployed, it needs a lot of improvements through time to increase its accuracy and to be and to achieve this the purpose of this AI deployment. Finally, it is important that financial institutions, when deploying AI, they have to invest in change management, because most of people that work in banks, they see AI as a threat and not as an assistant that can help them do things more accurately with while being less risky and while achieving the most impact on their return on equity and on their business model. So this is everything from me. I'll be here if there are any questions later. Thank you, Brother Rashid. I hand you the floor.
Thank you.
Hand you back the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Now moving to Mr. Casey. Looking ahead, so how do we see the role of AI evolving in the financial services over the next 3 to 5 years, especially that there are changes in the regulation, and also there are market expectations with all the developments that are happening in this trend or this technology, in order for us to also place the Islamic finance within the broader financial ecosystem. So over to you, Mr. Casey.
Okay, what I wanted to do here was to try and place us by reference to what's going on in other places, and I hope I can share some useful data from Europe, because the European Banking Authority did do its own survey of banks in autumn 2024, so not too far ahead of our own survey, very comparable in dates. And part of that is showing us, I think, in an interesting way, what is going on elsewhere and allowing comparison with what Islamic banks are doing. Can people all see what is currently a first slide here?
Yep, we can see the title of the first slide.
Let me move along a little. By the way, before I do that, in commenting on what Islamic banks are doing, I have had the benefit of some parts of the data from the survey, which Mohammed didn't have time to present early, including some of that appeared in free text write-in questions. That did demonstrate very clearly that there are some areas in which Islamic banks are using AI technology that we didn't figure out. Unfortunately, that area is filling in CIBAFI questionnaires. We found that a number of the free text responses did not appear to have been written by humans. And of course, some of them clearly on that criterion failed the Turing test. It would be fascinating to know how many passed that we didn't spot. That said, let's look first at what European banks are doing and the technologies that they are using. Now, that breakdown is not exactly the same as we used, but you do have the ability to track over time. And it's clear first, before we get into deep issues of AI, that cloud and edge computing is being used by something like 75% of European banks. That's a much higher percentage than we are seeing among the Islamic banks. And there are some very interesting questions there about why. AI, of course, is growing. What they define as general purpose AI which is the rising yellow line, which only appears towards the end, is clearly moving upwards very rapidly. The European banks are well ahead of where we understand the Islamic banks to be. Where are they using it? Well, here's the breakdown that we get. And one of the things that is very clear is that quite a lot of this, as we've already said, is around things like AML, CFT, fraud detection. And I suspect that quite a lot of the profiling and clustering of clients similarly has this in mind, the prevention and detection of financial crime. The other important thing is customer support. And again, here, the figure well exceeds that for Islamic banks. But I should say that the European definition here plainly includes chatbots. And one suspects that quite a lot of what is going on here, particularly in the use of generative AI, is frankly customer support through chatbots. And that is supported by this chart, which focuses particularly on GPAI. I'm sorry, I'm hearing a voice over me.
على التوجيه الأوروبي لكيف القيود على البنوك الأجنبية أكيد من بينها البنوك المغربية.
Sorry, what is going on here? There's a...
We'll try to unmute. We'll try to unmute. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I don't know what happened here, but
yeah.
let me escape from that, therefore, and to return. Now, I have to be a little bit careful in the comparisons that I draw with Islamic banks. And let me see if I can now stop sharing. Okay, I think never mind. Because what we see among the Islamic banks in general is that they are rather smaller than many of the banks elsewhere. We have a limited number of the really heavy hitters. We don't have in our community, I think, any of the globally systemically significant banks, a limited number of regionally significant banks. So size, I think, is a factor in what is going on. And perhaps I will come back a little later, or would you like me to do it now to talk about the regulatory issue?
Yeah, okay, we can continue with the regulatory issues and also ethical risks as well.
Okay, let me talk about some of the issues. First of all, that the Islamic banks are themselves flagging. And we asked them about the regulatory issues, what they're expecting of their regulators. Actually, quite a bit of this was about what they were expecting, shall we say, of the public authorities more generally, because some of this is not necessarily what you would get by going to a central bank. They clearly feel themselves highly constrained in terms of the availability of appropriately trained people, and they see a need for the development of skills, which will, of course, be partly through the educational system in their countries, perhaps partly through industry activity, perhaps led by a central bank, but it's going beyond what you can expect of those banks. Another thing that they are asking for quite loudly is the development of the technical infrastructure. And it's clear that a lot of those banks are working in places where you cannot take for granted, say, the availability of fast telecoms, and data networks even for the larger players in industry, let alone for general public use. And that is an issue for them. Some people are saying, in our country, we don't have large server farms. Are we happy that all our data be processed in another country? So there are big areas of development here. There's another area that is, in one sense, regulatory, but again, probably not straightforwardly down to the banking regulators. And that's the creation of a regulatory environment for data protection and data sharing. Really, personal data is fundamental to training and using AIs in the kind of context we're talking about. Now, where banks are relatively small, they would dearly love to be able to use some pooled industry data of some kind to train shall we say, industry standard AIs, perhaps, certainly to train their own systems. In what terms can this or can this not be done? And this will be a matter of the general law of the land, not simply financial services. What data protection do they need to put in place when they're using personal data in unexpected ways? Do there need to be any general cybersecurity standards either for the country or for the industry within that country? Quite a lot of questions are being asked there. We're not always talking about places that have established open banking environments in which those questions have perforce been partly answered. The other issue around it is who bears responsibility for things that AIs do on behalf of the bank. This appears to be, for the industry, dominantly a conduct issue. So if the AI recommends a product to a client, which turns out to be inappropriate for the client, and it turns out that the fact that it was inappropriate, perhaps, by the way, inappropriate in a Sharia way, should have been seen. Who bears responsibility for the fact that the AI did not see it? If the bank makes poor investment decisions, again, relying on an AI, which probably it has in substance bought in, though it may well have trained it in part on its own market data, who bears responsibility for that when the regulator comes knocking at the door? And it's quite clear that the Islamic banks are, some of them, really quite nervous about this. Now, I have to say, in response to what a previous speaker said, I have the strong impression that the Islamic banks are not beating at their regulator's door. They're not shouting at the regulator, give us answers to these, we are being held back, we need to push ahead. A number of them seem to be waiting to be told by the regulators what they can do, and will only then move forward. I think that's a great pity, because I think there is more that they can and should be doing. That's probably enough from me for the moment, but I'll happily come back in response to some of the questions, because I think there are other things that we can talk about in the regulatory sphere.
Thank you, Mr. Petrikesi. Now, with all these explanations related to the meaning of AI, data analytics, the potential use cases, and also the value proposition of these trends, taking also into consideration elements related to governance, regulation, and ethics. I think understanding all this brings us to the question, what will be the practical roadmap for the implementation of AI if a bank or data analytics, if a bank wants to leverage its benefits and manage any associated risks. And I would like to ask Prof. Yasser to highlight some of the internal or external success factors that would differentiate a financial institution that is willing to manage and scale the AI adoption from those that remain stuck in research or pilot projects.
Thank you. Excellent question. So if I want to kind of reflect on this based on what I initially started, and a lot of good points that other speakers, Dr. Ahmad and Mr. Casey, added to this picture, I think it's quite important if you want to scale up going beyond pilot. Number one was something that I think emphasized at least in two presentations, which is managers need to be more AI literate. We need to better understand what is AI at a managerial level. Another important characteristics I think we need to understand is that managers' job has kind of moved more and more towards, like, I use a metaphor of gardening, a gardener. They need to be patient. They need to be very mindful on the choice of AI, which we look at these surveys that we run, and those are very important to do. But at the same time, if 80% of the banks are doing this, it doesn't mean we are going to go and exactly do that. So we need to be quite mindful of what are the specifics. For example, the data and infrastructure capabilities are increasingly important. As Mr. Casey and Dr. Ahmad also emphasized on this, I think it's an excellent point that more and more we need to have our own data. There are options that we can consider. We may not immediately get there, but the point is, because data is going to format the algorithm and the AI model that we use for deployment. And we can't rely on external data only or primarily. And we need to increasingly have our own data, maintaining it, cleaning it, and make sure that it's in compliance with regulations of national or regional aspects. So those are quite important. And we need to kind of have a broader perspective as a gardener on how we seed AI in some business processes, how we grow it, some areas we may trim. I'll bring some examples in the course if you are going to go that path. But healthcare is very similar to banking in terms of the heavy regulation. And it's interesting to see how some of the healthcare organizations from, for example, radiology departments, that everything is very data-based like banking, how they have started doing it in the past decade. And the applications and the AI models that develops, I think one of the cases that I was going through in the Netherlands, there was not a single AI project that came out with a kind of a meaningful operational integration that takes less than 2 years. So it takes time, it needs patience, it needs trimming, it needs gardening, and it needs our data. A lot of regulation and risk issues are going to be there, and we need to work around it, and it's not going to happen overnight. And the last thing I want to mention is I think we are increasingly need to be mindful about what we are chasing as the strategy, and that's a managerial decision. I think traditionally, if you look back, technologists are not very good, to be very honest. And as somebody who was an engineer in the past, not anymore, in predicting AI, predicting technology, and what's going to happen. It's actually a managerial decision. Some of you may know Jeff Hinton, one of the godfathers of AI from University of Toronto, Canadian-British computer scientist. His prediction, I think, in 2016 was, in 2 years, AI and deep learning are going to replace radiologists. And it didn't happen. The number of radiologist jobs has tripled from that time. So it's actually a managerial decision and understanding and perspective and vision and a strategy making. And it's yours. You need to understand where to use it, how to use it, and you do not necessarily need to follow the crowd. It's a very mindful adoption, nurturing, and implementation. Many of the times we are kind of captivated by some moonshot projects that are limited, pilot, and very, very small scope. But real integration is the big deal. I think the main challenge for managers is to go from innovation in a task with AI, a small chatbot to really something that is integrated, like the AML that has been integrated in banking probably from decades ago as an ML-based, machine learning-based application. So those are quite important things we need to consider when we head towards implementation. Passing microphone back to you, Mr. Rashid, if we'd be happy to add more if there's any more questions.
Thank you, Prof. Yasser. I think I will take the question where to use AI because we've seen a number of AI use cases presented by all the speakers in addition to the presentation from Dr. Ahmed. And we talked about the value proposition of AI for financial institutions. The question now is, with all these use cases that we have, what do we need to prioritize in order to make the best of this technology? I would like to hear the perspectives of Dr. Ahmed on this point.
Rashid, in fact, the one-size-fits-all approach is not valid in this context because every financial institution has its own priorities, its own difficulties, its own contexts. So as an advice is first, when starting implementing AI, you don't need to draft a roadmap or an AI strategy. You have to start first with applications that can achieve a real impact on your let's say return on equity, and where you learn and where you start to this transformation. Then a second application, a third application. Then once you have those let's say those first applications achieved correctly, successfully, then you can draft a roadmap for the transformation. So every context has its own specificities, its own difficulties, and every time a financial institution needs to start its deployment, we don't need, as I mentioned, a strategy. We just need a deep understanding of what we can do, a data management that should be. I mean, most of as I told you, when interacting with banks or with insurance companies, whenever there is a brilliant idea, they say, okay, it's perfect, we can have it. But whenever you say, okay, it's time to share your data, we don't have data as you structured the way you need it. And this is something that can limit the growth of AI and deployment of AI, but it's just a matter of time, because if you don't do it yourself, others will do it, and you can lose your advantage in the market. So again, data management is something crucial in the AI deployment. Every financial institution needs to have its own department for data management and structuring, and it's the basic thing to start a real effective and accurate implementation of AI. Now, as you may know, all the algorithms are accessible. They are you can get them sometimes with no code. But the things that will make your algorithm better than the other, or your application smarter than the other, is the volume of data you have, their accuracy, the reliability. So it's something important. To the priority, as I mentioned, is about data more than on algorithms or application. Then whenever you have enough data, sufficient volume of data, everything can be easily implemented and deployed. So this is my insight regarding this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. I will go back to Ms. Casey if there is anything to add on these 2 points, on the points of use cases and also the factors that will be used to build a successful strategy for the adoption of AI and data analytics.
I'm not sure I have anything much to add on that point in general. I would like to add a little bit on one thing, which is we haven't really said what, if anything, is special about Islamic banking. If we were having this discussion under the auspices of a general banking association, would we have said all the same things? And insofar as we were talking about smaller and medium-sized banks rather than the global giants, then I think a lot of it would have been the same. And therefore, one of the questions that interests me is there anything special here? Now, the thing that is most obviously special is the requirement to comply with Shariah. And clearly, Islamic banks will need at minimum to make sure that their AIs appropriately, quotes, understand, unquotes, the Sharia constraints on them. That will be very obvious in areas like where they may invest. It may be a touch less obvious in areas such as not selling short, because you can imagine that if they have bought in a general purpose investment AI, it may be looking at strategies, some of which would involve short selling. But those are the relatively easy things to manage. What we're seeing, though, is that in the questionnaire, a number of Islamic banks seem to believe that there are Sharia issues that go beyond this. Now, it's not clear. They have generally not articulated these things very well. Some of them may be the really tricky ethical issues, like how do we try to include the purposes of Sharia, the maqasid, our underlying values within an AI that is providing customer service. And the tricky bit about that is how those are articulated, or at least how they are recognized in, for example, flagging the data that are being put into the AI. Because you're not dealing here usually with absolutes. You may not invest in A. You're rather, it would be better to invest in B than in A. How is data processed in such a way that the AI can absorb that set of values? That may be what they're talking about. The tricky bit is, do they think that there are other areas which do not fall into the purposes category, but really fall into more or less conventional speak, what is permissible, what is not permissible, in which AI in particular, perhaps other data technologies, may give rise to problems. I have to say that in what I've read, we've seen some people who seem to be sucking their teeth a bit, but not articulating what problems they actually see. The thing that gives me a bit more confidence is that if you look at the banks that represent themselves as relatively advanced in the implementation of AI, they are among those least likely to find Sharia problems. And that is interesting. I think that the problems which have not been articulated are probably actually illusions. And it may well be that people are just thinking of every possible difficulty they can see rather than tackle the issues. But I think there is something here that we need to get to the bottom of, to know whether there are, what is the extent of the real difference, if any, between Islamic and conventional banks in finding our way forward here.
Thank you, Mr. Putukesi. And I think
Indeed,
with this...
can I add that if anyone
please.
in our audience
Yes, please.
can articulate a clear Sharia problem associated with the use of AI, I think we might find that immensely valuable in shaping what perhaps we as CIBAFI need to do going forward from here.
Thank you. Yeah. So thank you so much, and thanks to all the other speakers for the insightful contributions and discussions. And now we will open the floor for the participants to share their questions. So we still have a couple of minutes, so we can address 2 to 3 questions. I have already one question related to concerns of privacy and data protection. So the question is, especially for Islamic financial institutions, so the question is, how should Islamic financial institutions address privacy concerns when using AI in departments like compliance and risk management? And can we consider AI trustworthy when it comes to protecting sensitive financial and personal data? So I would like to start with the response. Yeah, Dr. Ahmed, please.
Yes, data protection is always an issue in AI because today we have shared applications that can be used. For example, as I mentioned, algorithms are already pre-trained, they are available. You can use it on OpenAI or any other platform like Google, Amazon, etc. But the problem is, as a bank, if you share your data, it becomes a little bit sensitive. So most of banks, there are 2 ways to handle this thing. First, you can develop your own AI applications. If you are a large bank, if you have necessary capabilities and necessary financial resources to do it. Otherwise, you can deal with startups. For example, from our perspective in Neuronize, we have understood this issue, and we have 2 things that we propose. First thing is we don't need the sensitive data at all. We just need cases. I mean, data without sensitive data is only sufficient to conduct or to run our algorithms. Second thing, you can do it. We provide banks as a solution with local algorithms inside their in their data infrastructure, so they would not share their data with any other provider. They don't share their data with us. So this is a solution. And once they run their algorithm, takes into account their specificities without having to share their data with us. So yes, it's an issue. And sometimes the algorithm itself, apart from data protection, sometimes there's an issue of discrimination. For example, if you use data like religion, factors like religion, like gender, like ethnicity, and use it as a factor in your algorithm, an AI algorithm, especially when it comes to scoring or any predictive solution, especially for machine learning. This is a real ethical issue in some places. So you need to know how to structure data without being discriminatory. So, those are the main issues that we are trying to deal with. And it depends on the size of the bank. If it's a large bank and it doesn't want to share its data, it can develop its own applications whenever the application requires the sharing the data. Or they can deal with the startups. They can deploy their own solution at the level of the bank. Then they can, let's say, to utilize the algorithm without having to share their data. So these are the 2 possibilities, while taking into account the discriminatory results that can be really important for the bank. So this is, the main ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Yes, Mr. Peter Casey, you want to add something?
Just a couple of words. I think for smaller banks, and particularly in some of the semi-regulatory areas, access to a wider pool of data than their own clients may be important. If, for example, you are trying to detect patterns that may suggest that a fraud is being perpetrated, or that a transaction has some of the possible characteristics of money laundering, a wide base of transactions, including some coming from other banks, would probably be helpful to you if you are reasonably small. Yeah, just to be very simple-minded about it, it may be observable that some non-bank trader is engaging through multiple banks in a pattern of transactions, which suggest that they may be up to no good of one of various kinds. Do you have any access to data that come outside your bank, from outside your bank? And that turns up in two ways. One is training your algorithm so that patterns associated with potentially known fraud, shall we say, become detectable, even if for the detection purposes you were looking only at your own clients' transactions, but also actually sharing the data with other banks with the aim to detect transactions that are suspicious. Now, what are the laws in the relevant country about, say, the sharing of data between banks? And some of us, I think, are used to working in places where that has been very substantially thought about, where there may be a whole raft of not only of legislation, but of legal cases testing it, where, even going back a few years, the advent of open banking has at least forced people to confront some of the data sharing issues. Other people seem to be working in environments in which they genuinely have very limited understanding of the law, and they believe that the law in their jurisdiction is not at all well defined in any of these areas. I mean, these are the relatively straightforward ones. There are, of course, more complex ones one can imagine, but it seems that some of them have doubts about whether they can resolve even the straightforward issues. I think I can also say that some of them do not have great faith in their regulators. I mean, in the sense of their regulators' technical knowledge. I think they are not clear that if they pose some of these questions to their central bank, say, they will readily engage with people who can at least have a proper discussion. Some of them do not even believe that if they pose a question to their regulators about their use of cloud computing, they will get a sensible answer, say, of what cybersecurity arrangements they will need to have in place to do this. And they are seeing the lack of knowledge among their regulators as a potential hindrance. I can't tell whether that's a correct diagnosis, but or simply an excuse, but it clearly is a perception of a number of the smaller Islamic banks who responded.
Thank you, Mr. Peter Casey. Before I give the cloud to Prof. Yasser, I would like to ask a question also related that speaks to his presentation regarding the implementation. So when we are in the implementation stage, we are in front of two choices: an in-house development or partnering with AI vendors. So which road is better, or how can we balance between the two, especially that we talked about elements related to data protection and also security?
That's an excellent question. I think one trade-off that managers need to think about is the partnership. Data and algorithm are two things. As mentioned, your AI, we have a saying that AI is only as good as the data that is trained on. So if you have good data, you can train an algorithm. So algorithms are available. You get them, you train it, you label your data, and based on very specific needs that you have, you develop an AI model that is working for you. So the challenge becomes when there are large technology vendors outside or startups, both of them, a range, You're an organization and you have your data. So how does that partnership works? They have sometimes the algorithm, but you train it on your own data, it becomes an AI that you can use. However, if it's a startup, then the startup needs to go and sell it and to other institutions as well. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense commercially to do that. So that tension of which company we go, they work with us in the long term to train an algorithm, and then that algorithm is ours, and we need to kind of have ownership over that. So those ownership discussions, I think, are among the ones that banks need to have a very early conversation with the vendors that they have. If they can develop internally, excellent. You have a good IT department, AI department, whatever it is, you develop everything, it's homegrown. But increasingly, AI becomes more expensive. You need to train it, and it takes talent. Not all banks have that AI expertise. Large firms maybe have, startups may have. But as soon as they bring their algorithm and talent and start training it, it becomes an entity that both of them have ownership in it. And then how does it go? What if a startup comes and helps you train, but want to go and sell it somewhere else? Or they are not willing to train. Sometimes they say that we have pre-trained it, but it has been trained on a data set that predicts well, for example, in Bahrain, but may not be predicting well in UAE, for example, given the diversity of the regulatory body and communities there. So having that said, I think it's quite a difficult decision, but we need to kind of pretty proactively approach this. To what extent we go out, open up regulatory issues, risk issues, or internally develop it. And it goes back to extent of resources and infrastructure that we want to allocate for AI, because it's not a set it and forget it. When you have an AI model, if you deploy it for a year or so, the use of it is going to affect the algorithm, because AI self-learns, and you need to clean it constantly for, as mentioned, discrimination purposes, bias purposes, to make sure that it's a living being. It constantly needs to be maintained rather than develop, train, set it and forget it. It's not that way. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you, Prof. Yasser. And I would like also to thank the other speakers, Mr. Casey and Dr. Ahmed, for the insightful presentations and the contributions in this session. With this, we come to the end of this session. I would like to thank also the participants, and I will pass on the mic to Dr. Mohammed. Over to you, Mohammed.
Thank you, Rashid. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of our webinar. We would like to thank all the speakers, those who have joined us today, for the valuable insights shared and also the fruitful discussion that covered various aspects of JIB's report 2025. We would like to thank the audience and the participants for their active attention and also participation. Please visit CIBAFI website and follow us on social media to be updated on CIBAFI activities and initiatives in the coming days. We thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you in our future events. Thank you and have a good day ahead. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you so much for having me.